Hello. So inventories are really important to any game, and you have to make sure that you have a really great inventory system. But today I wanted to go over a really good way to create a extremely well working inventory system, just like you see on screen now. We have apples and sticks that are able to be collected around the map and then get added to the player's inventory. I wanted to teach you how to create this inventory system step by step, but before we get started, if you could please subscribe to the channel to help you to push this video to more aspiring game developers, then it would mean the world. If you have any questions or you need help on anything within this video, then let me know in the comments down below. But let's get started. So let's get started with creating the inventory. Also, I forgot to mention that this video is technically episode 4 of the survival series, but even if you're not following this series, in this video will still teach you how to create an excellent inventory for your game. Now we're going to first start by creating 2 different scripts that are going to extend resources, one for our inventory items and then one for our inventory script. So to do this, we'll go up to our script and we'll click on the little file button up here, create a brand new script, and then we can name the first one our inventory item.gd, and we want this to inherit a resource and not a node, so we can just make it inherit a resource just like so, and then we can click create to create the brand new script, and this script is going to be for our inventory items. So we'll set the class name to be inventory item, and then we will have 2 export variables, whatever the variables that our item will need. So it's going to need a name and it's going to need a texture. So we'll say export var name is going to be equal to a string, and the string for now is going to be equal to nothing. And we'll have another export var, which is going to be the texture of the item, and that's going to be equal to a texture 2D, right? So that is our inventory script. And to make this into a resource, or first I want to go down to our file system, create a new folder, and I want to create this as an inventory folder. And the reason this is going to be an inventory folder is because I want to keep everything organized. So we'll throw in our little inventory item.gd script into here, and then I want to create our inventory item. So for this video, I'm going to be going over an apple. So if we go into our inspector over here, we click this little plus button, it's going to open up a tab to create a new resource. If we type in the resource or the script that we just made that extends a resource, inventory item, the class name, it's going to come up inventory item. And then if we click create, you're going to see we have a name and a texture, and we can implement these. So for the name, that's going to be an apple. And for the texture, we can load in our apple's icon texture, whatever we want to show in the inventory. So we click on the apple, we can click on this little save button, save, and then we'll save this into our inventory folder. But I also want to make a new folder, and I want to call this folder items, and we'll store all of our inventory items within this folder. And then we can rename this resource to apple.tres, because this is our apple icon and our apple resource. So now in our items, we have a little apple resource here, and that is how you create a resource. But I want to go and create a new script, and this script is going to be called just inventory.gd, because this is going to be the main script for our inventory, and this is also going to extend a resource, and I'll explain why this extends a resource here in just a minute. But we'll have a class name, and the class name for this will be inventory, and the export var on this one is just going to be what we have stored in our inventory for now. So var items, and then what items are going to be in the inventory, which is we have to store that in an array. And what do we want to store in the array? Well, we want to store inventory items in the array. So inventory items is the class name for our inventory item.gd. So we want to store this. So that means we'll be able to store apples in the array. But that's all we'll be able to store so far is just apples, because that's the only inventory item resource that we have created. And the reason our inventory.gd is going to extend a resource is because we are going to connect this script to any inventory that we have. So it could be an NPC's inventory, the player's inventory, a chest inventory. And how do we add this to our player or make it into a player's inventory? Well, we're going to have to create a new resource for that, right? So we can go up here to the inspector, click on this little plus button, and then instead of inventory item, we're going to look up just inventory, and you can see our inventory.gd comes up. We can click create, and then it's going to pop up over here. And if we click on this little array here, it's going to open it up, and it's going to allow us to make a size. So for this size is we're going to insert how many slots we want our player's inventory to have. For this video, I'm going to go with 12. And you're going to see that it adds 12 slots to our inventory. And then if we go and grab some apples, we can drag in apples to random slots within the inventory, just like this. And you're going to see that we have an apple here, an apple here, and an apple here. But how do we save this? Well, how do we actually add this to the player? Well, if we go up here to the top, we click save it, and then I want to save it into the main inventory folder. and then we can just name this the player's inventory.tres, and we can save it. But this is every single slot. So this is slot 1 of the inventory, slot 2 of the inventory, slot 3 of the inventory, and slot 3 of the inventory has an apple. Slot this is going to be slot 7 down here, so this is going to have an apple, and slot 8 is also going to have an apple. So that is going to work correctly. We just have to add the visuals, and we have to connect this to the player. So to connect it to our player, well, we can go to our player script, and then we can go up here towards the top, and we can make a exported variable. And this exported variable is just going to be our inventory. So it's going to be a var inventory, and we can just make this equal an inventory, or that class name. And then if we go to our 2D scene, we can go to our main, our character body 2D, and you're going to see our little exported variable. If we grab our player's inventory and we drag it into that variable and we click on it, you can see that this is our inventory. We have 3 apples stored within the inventory. So that is going to have all of the slots, and now it's connected to our player. But now we have to have visuals for the inventory, because this is the inventory, but we can't really show it and appear it on the screen. So how are we going to do that? Well, if we go up to the top, we can create a new scene, and we're going to use another node, and we're going to use a control node, because this is going to be the UI. And then we can rename this control node to our inventory UI, because that is what it is. And then for now, I'm going to throw in a color rect as a child just for testing, so we can test the opening and closing of it. And then we can go back to our inventory, we can click on a new script, and we can add the inventory.ui. And I want to add this to our inventory folder as well. So we can create this, and our inventory GD script down here, I'm going to also add to our inventory. And for this little control node script here, we're just going to have it extend the control, and then we're going to have a variable to check if it is open or closed. And when we start, we want it to be closed. We are control S, I just control S'd it, and we saved the scene, and we saved it into the inventory folder. So make sure you do that. But then we're going to have a function at the very beginning of the game to make sure the inventory is closed. So on the ready function, we're going to close the inventory. Now this is no function, but if we come down here, we can make the function close. And in the function close, we're just going to change the visibility, and we're going to say is open is false. So we'll say visibility. Our visible is going to equal false, and then we're going to say is open is going to equal to true. And then we're also going to need another function, and this function is going to be our open function. In this function, we're going to say visible is going to equal true, and is open is going to equal false. Wait, is going to equal true. What? I don't know what I'm saying, but it's going to equal true, because if we open it, then the inventory is going to be open, right? And then we're going to create a process function, so we can grab input, and we can just say function process, and then we can say if input dot is action just pressed, whatever button we want. We're going to use I, so we're going to have to go up into the settings and make this a input. And then we're going to say basically is our if is open. So if it's true, then we want to close. Then else we want to open the inventory, right? So if we go up to the project settings, we go to our input map, we can create a new action. We're going to say I, we're going to add this, and this is going to be the I key, and that's the key that we're going to use for the inventory. Now, if we go into our player and we go to the 2D scene and we add this inventory scene to the player, you can see that it's going to show. And if we join the world and we play, it's visible off start. We click I, and it's not turning visible. And why is that? Well, we can go and see exactly why that is. Okay, so this is my fault. Down here at the close function, you can see that we have is open equals true. So basically we're never showing the UI. So if we change this to false, that means when we close it, well, it's going to equal false, and that means we are going to change it, or that means we're going to change is open, because if it's always equal to true, then we're always going to be closing the function, right? We're never going to be going to the open, so it's always going to be playing the visible is false. And I added this print statement just to make sure everything was working, but we'll remove that. And now if we go to our world, or if we go to our player and we instance the UI, so basically all I did was go up here, click on the player, click on this little chain mark, and then we instance our inventory UI right here. And then if we go to our world and we play, we can see that when we walk around, the inventory is closed. We click I, the inventory opens, and it closes again. So how do we make this look a little bit better? Well, we can go to our inventory UI, we can remove the color rect, And then we have to add a way to create the actual UI and the inventory, so we have different slots that the player can see. So we're going to add a 9-patch rec for this. And this 9-patch rec is going to be basically over here. If we go to, it's going to be able to expand it, but keep the corners of the inventory the same, so we can basically make it bigger, but make it look the same scale or the same aesthetic. I don't really know how to explain it, but I'll explain it right here. So we can see that we have a texture. If we load our inventory texture, which the links to this will be in the description below. So if we go to our art, we go to our inventory art, you can see that we have our inventory slot and our inventory background. If we click on the inventory background, you can see that if we expand this, well, it's going to look kind of funky, right? So that's not going to look right. But if we go over here and we use patch margins, then we can say we want the left 6 pixels and we want the top 6 pixels. That means it's going to hold those pixels, right? So those won't move. They'll stay the same, and only the middle will move. So if we do all the sides 6, then you can kind of see how this works, and it's going to look a lot better, right? So we can make this bigger and we can expand it. So that is how we're going to do that. And that is how a 9-patch scene work, or 9-patch rect works. And then now we have to go in and we're going to add a grid, and we're going to add all the slots to the grid. Then we're going to have a way for those slots to update so we can display it on the player, or we can display what the player inventory is holding, but visually. So if we click Control S, we can save this scene, and I want to make sure everything is saved into our inventory scene down here, and it is, so that is all good. Okay, so now we need to go and create our slots, and to do this, we're going to add a panel as a brand new scene, and we're going to rename this into a slot, or for our slots. So we can name this inventory UI slot, just like that, because this is our inventory's UI for the slot. And we're going to first have a background for our slot, and we're going to make this a sprite 2D. We're going to go over here to the texture, and we are going to load our art in inventory art, and we're going to add the inventory slot.png. You can see that it's like kind of up here, so we can go to offset and we can disable centered, so it lines up like this. So whenever we go to our grid during in our inventory UI, it lines up correctly and it doesn't line up and it look funky. So then if we go to the parent node or the slot, we want to first of all get rid of this color, or first we want to kind of line it up with the slot so it's the same size. Then you can kind of see how there's a little outline. If we go to our visibility, we go to our self modulate, and we can change this A to nothing, and then that is going to be invisible, just how we want it. And then if we go into our layout, we're going to see a custom minimum size. If we open the transfer, we're going to see a size here. We want to copy these numbers, the X and the Y, up here to the custom minimum, so that's the size that it stays. And then we want to save this scene into our inventory into our inventory folder as the inventory UI slot. And then once we save this, now we have our slot. So if we go to our inventory UI, then we're going to go to our 9-patch rect, and we're going to add a grid container. This is so that our slots will show on our inventory. So if we add this to our grid container, then we can instance 12 slots as the child of this grid container. So that's going to be a lot. But if we click on this instant button, and then we look up our slot scene, we can instance this slot, and then we can copy this slot, paste it, and then paste it as many times until you have as many slots as you want. And we're going to go with 12. So this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now we have 12 slots in our grid container. And I'm going to go up here and name this first slot 1, just so it's easier for us to read. And then if we go over here, you can kind of see that it goes in a one long line all the way down. So if we go to our layout for our grid container, you're going to see this column, not even the layout, just in the grid container, in the inspector, you're going to see columns. We have one column. If we have 2 columns, it's going to make it 2. Then if we have 3, it's going to make it 3. And then if we have 4, it's going to make it just like this. And that's how I'm going to leave it. I'm going to have 4 columns. And then we're going to go to our 9-patch rect. I'm going to expand the backside so it fits so that it's able to fit our inventory slots. And you can kind of see how these are off centered. So to fix that, we can go to our grid container, we can go to our layout, and we can go to our layout mode. And this layout mode, we're going to change it to anchors, and we want this to be anchored in the center. And as it's anchored in the center, you can see how this changes it. We can go back to the 9-patch rect. We can move it around a little bit just like that, and that looks centered to me. So these are going to be our inventory slots. And then once that is centered and it looks just like this, we can resize the root node, which is our inventory, to match the exact same size as our inventory itself. So whenever we want it to align with something, for example, on our canvas layer, or we want it to show in the middle of the screen, that's how you're going to want to make sure that this is perfectly in line, right? So then we can go to our root node and we can go to our layout, and then we can change the custom minimum size to equal the transform size, just like this. And then we can save the scene. So there's two ways to implement an inventory. First, you can have it in the world to where it's on a canvas layer, so it pops up in the middle of the screen, and it doesn't matter where the player is at, it's going to pop up in the middle of the screen. Or you can have the inventory where it follows around the player. And if you want to add it to where it just pops up on the screen, well, you just go to your world, you'll add a canvas layer, just like that, a canvas layer right there, and then you'll add the inventory slot as a child node. But for this, I'm going to add it above the player's head so it follows the player around the map. So we can go to our player and we can see that it's already, inserted in, and it looks more like an inventory. If we just move it above the player's head just like so, it's going to look good, right? And if we save the scene, we go to our world, we play the scene, you're going to see that we can run around, we can open it, and we have an inventory. We can close it, inventory, close it, open it, 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 close it, and it works just good. But there's no items in the inventory, right? If we go and we click this apple, well, it doesn't appear, and there's no apple in the inventory. So what are we going to do? Well, this is going to be a little different thing, and we're going to have to go to our slot scene, and we're going to have to build an item display. So if we go to our slot scene, we go to our slot, and then we add a new thing. We'll add a sprite 2D, and we'll name this our item display, because that is what it is, right? Our item display. And then we'll add a script to our slot, and this script will inherit the panel just like this. And in this script, well, we're going to go over, first, we're going to need an onReady variable just so we can access our item display, so we can change it. So we can say onReady var item visuals. So item visuals is going to be a sprite 2D, and this sprite 2D is going to equal our item display, just like that. Then we're going to create a new function, which is going to be our update function, which is going to update the item that is displayed. So we'll say item is going to be an inventory item, has to be an inventory item, but then we're going to say if not item, then item.visual .visible is false, because there is no item there. So if there's no item, then we want our item visual to not be visible, obviously, because there's no item to show. But if there is an item, then we want our item visual dot visible to equal true, because there is an item and we want it to show. And then we want our item visual dot texture to be changed, dot texture to be equal our item's texture. So for example, if it's an apple, then it's going to equal our apple's texture, right? So now if we go to our inventory UI script, and we open up this script, well, we're going to create a couple new variables. And the first variable we're going to create is going to be for our player's inventory, so we can get our player's inventory. So if we go and we'll say onReady var inventory equals preload, and we're just going to preload the player's inventory right here. So we'll get the player inventory resource and preload it. And then we'll have another onReady variable, and this onReady var is going to be for the slots that are in the inventory. So slots, and this is going to equal an array, and the slots are going to be our 9-patch rect and our container, and then we're going to get all the children of that grid container, because that's all the slots, because we want to get all the slots and not just one of the slots, right? So we'll say 9-patch rect slash grid container, and then we want to say get children, so we get all of them, right? Just like that. And then we can create a new function down here, and this function is going to be the update slots function. And in this function, we're going to go and say for I in range. So basically we're going to have to get all the slots we're going to say minimum inventory, and I'll explain this in just a second, but minimum inventory item dot size, and then we're going to say slot dot size. So we're going to get the size, and then we're going to say slots dot the I that we just checked dot update. So we're going to call our slot, and we're going to call our update function. So it's going to update it into whatever the inventory item is for that specific slot. So basically, all this is doing is we're going to find the number. So it's going to go through all the slots we have, right? So it's going to check. It's going to check slot 1. It's going to check slot 2. It's going to check slot 3. And it's basically going to say, and it's going to update our slot. So it's going to check it. So it's going to say for slots 0, then it's going to update slot 1. It's going to check for slot 1, then it's going to update slot 2, right? And it's going to keep on going all the way down the list. So that's calling this update function, and it's going to pass through the variable of our resource, right? That's in our player inventory that we just imported. So if we go to our ready function and we call the update slots variable, or we call the update slots function in our ready function, we go to the world and we play, we are going to have apples visible, or we should have apples visible, but we are getting an error. So where is the error coming from? Well, let's see. Okay, so this error is a quick fix. We have item instead of items. We have to make sure we have the S on there. And now if we play the world scene, we'll see that everything loads up. If we click I, we have apples in the inventory. They don't look right. They're not centered, but that's an easy fix. But you can see that they are in their correct slots that we added earlier. And I'll go around and I'll play around and I'll change them up. But to fix this, we got to go to our slot scene, and then we're going to have to add a center container on our item display. So we'll say on our slots, we'll add a center container, and then we will add a panel within our center container, and then we'll move our item display into the panel. But then our center container, we want to make sure that we make it the same size as our panel itself, just like this. And then we want to go to our layout. We want to make our transform. We want to make sure the minimum is the same as that. And then once we move our item display here, it should show right here in the middle of everything, right? So, or we got to update our item display in our script as well. So this is not going to be just at item display. It's going to be at center container. That's going to be our new path, right? So now if we go to our world and we play, and what just happened? Okay, so we got an error, and this is a simple error because our little thing up here is messed up, because I don't know why it kept the ending on there, but we just want item display just like that. Now if we play our world, we can see that if we open up our inventory, the apples are going to be even more messed up. So it's way up here. Something's way up here. I think that's our... Okay, and the reason it's so messed up is because our item display, our transform is way off. So if we reset our transform to 0, 0, then it's going to be in the center. As you can see, it was way up here. Now it's way down here. So now if we go back and we play our world, then last time, third time's the charm, we click I, you can see that the apples appear where they should. But if we close it, we go to our player, we go to the player's inventory here. We can kind of change this up. So we can say we want here, we can say, what if we want to add an apple to the very first slot? Well, we drag an apple to the first slot. We can remove an apple from this slot. Then we can add an apple to the last slot. So now we have an apple in the first slot, the last slot. We go to our world, and then we're going to have 2 more apples within the inventory. But if we click I, you can see that the inventory updates, and that is good. So now we have an updating inventory. The inventory updates based on what we have in our player's inventory. Next episode, we're going to go over how to stack items and how to actually collect the item and to update live in the game. So we're going to learn to insert items into the inventory and have it update on the screen automatically as you collect items as we pick the apple tree. So if we play the scene one more time, you can see that we have an apple tree. Once it grows, next episode, we're going to be able to pick it, and then we'll be able to open up our inventory, and we're going to see that it updated. But this is how the first episode of the inventory, and now we have basically a working inventory system. We just got to collect the apples and have it pass through the system that tell us, oh, we collected an apple, and then it's going to stack the items as well. So this is episode 1 of the inventory. I hope this was helpful, and I hope next episode is even more helpful, as it's going to finish up the inventory system and teach you everything you need to know about inventory in Godot. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, then please let me know in the comments below. I really appreciate it. And if you could subscribe to the channel, it would really help me out, and I would really appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much. But until next time, stay safe, and I hope to see you in the next episode, where we go over part 2 of the inventory and we learn all the ins and outs of stacking items and collecting items. But thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye bye.